Hello, hello, what is up? What is good? March has come to an end, and with it, another month of reading Weekly Shonen Jump. It's a pretty exciting month for the magazine. 2 series ended. No new series, but I think we've got a batch of 3 new series coming on the horizon. There was 5 issues in March, so there's quite a lot to discuss. I think we should just probably plunge right in and talk first about the series that met their one untimely and one exactly as promised time ends, starting with JJK Modulo, which, as promised, ran for about half a year, and then wrapped up on chapter 25. Never intended to be a long series, always intended to be kind of a final coda to the JJK manga franchise. Whether it is truly final or not, who's to say? But at least for now, this is the end. And I gotta say, what an odd end it is indeed. I don't know if I'm just getting filtered, and if I had paid more attention to everything going on up until this point, both in the original series and in Modulo, it would make perfect sense to me and be really insightful and interesting. And I'm just kind of outing myself as a low-B tourist by admitting that a lot of it seemed to have gone over my head, or if this is just genuinely a really strange ending and that everybody is as caught on the back foot as I was. But yeah, we very quickly went into what was, kind of the long-awaited apocalyptic battles of the series. Full-on sorcerer versus alien battles, the promise that was kind of teased to us right at the very start. Of course, we kind of at that point saw it more as a tragedy than as any sort of hype or a cathartic moment, which I thought was quite interesting. But then we also shifted gears and transitioned out of those fights just as abruptly, just as quickly, and with just as much kind of deliberate, I think, anti-climax, anti-satisfaction. You don't get to just see a clear winner and loser. Instead, things just kind of abruptly spiral out of those scenarios, with Yuji returning and them enacting this insane plan of removing the entire concept of cursed spirits. It reminds me actually of the ending of the final Evangelion movie. That aspect of it, that sort of plan where at the very final stages, all that's kind of left to do is to rewrite the laws of reality on a super fundamental level. Panda shows up. I think the thing that bothers me more is just not that any particular story decision disappointed me. Some of them confused me, sure. But more that so much of this kind of final little arc, if you could call it that, this final story of trying to decide whether or not to go through with this, and the implications of it, and the ramifications of it, and everyone's perspective on it and stuff. It's mostly just talking. It's just talking. And again, maybe I'm just gonna sound like a lowbie here, but it's this is a battle shonen series. At the very least, this is manga, a visual medium. Why are all these very climactic major moments happening just in conversation? I mean, at least Panda showed up. And then the final chapter is your kind of generic, we're all just sort of chill now ending. Peace has been established. Of course, they made a lot of overtures to potential problems in the future. I don't know if that was kind of setting up a potential second sequel. I kind of doubt it. I think instead that was more just to get across this sort of nuanced, imperfect, utopian finale where, okay, they've made these choices, some things are better, some things are worse, but at least they can kind of live in peace now between the Sumerians and the humans. And I'm all for that message. I think kind of the ideological message behind this series was very nice and very well expressed. But it feels sort of flat. It just feels not that exciting when it's just all right, let's play some baseball, let's play some catch, we're all good now. we're all good here. See you later. Just a lot of strange developments at the very end. Strange little punchlines and jokes happening in places that I really didn't expect it, where I expected something a little more definitive or a little more, I don't know, just like clear what the intention is. But yeah, I don't know. I think I can say that for a lot of this series. It made truly, truly strange moves, for better or for worse. I don't think anybody would have ever expected a sequel series to such a successful hit battle shonen to be so little about battles and be so little about the established characters, and to expand so little in terms of like the kind of lore and power scaling and stuff that like the very devoted fans care about. Instead, it was not really fan servicey at all in that regard. It was almost like deliberately anti-fan service. Kind of, oh, you expected hype moments and aura, Yuji running around battling even stronger special grade curses, as if this was like Boruto or something. No, this is the exact opposite. Oh, you thought it was going to be like Dragon Ball Z just because we had aliens? This is about as far from Dragon Ball Z as you can get. So I don't know. It was like very fascinating. I think it was a type of sequel series that I don't know if I've ever seen before. I don't know if we'll ever see it again. It's odd to me that Gege decided to kind of play that, what is kind of his big trump card in terms of like making money, making an impact, making a statement, of making a JJK sequel, and then chose to do it in this way is so bizarre. But, you know, I'll give it points for that. I like bizarreness. We'll give it a B+ for these final two chapters. There are parts that I did really like, and as I said, I really appreciate like the messaging and the tone of it. I do think it is interesting that they tried to go for this kind of things have changed, some for the better, some for the worse. We've opened up new risks, but we've solved some problems, kind of nuanced gray area ending. I think that is cool. I just wish it wasn't so much talking. I wish it made more sense to me. I wish it was like a little more, you know, for idiots. Okay. Next, let's talk about Gonron Egg, which made it to a, I don't quite want to say respectable, but it made it to 21 chapters at least, which I think gets it 2 tankobons. That's kind of like the minimum series length threshold. And I expect that second tankobon will have some sort of epilogue finale chapter added. That's becoming more and more common as well. And let me tell you, this series deserves it. I do actually want to go to bat for this one. I know it had many detractors. I know the art style wasn't for everyone. I think a lot of people dismissed it way too quickly as being something that it wasn't, thinking that it is just another very generic battle shonen, when really I think it occupied, excuse me, kind of an aesthetic and tonal space that Jump really doesn't get very often, that being this kind of dark, dingy, grotesque, post-apocalyptic fantasy series where things are a lot more violent, a lot more creepy, a lot more unsettling than most other Jump series. I think a lot of people just did not expect that tone from it and did not go looking to this series for that kind of thing and dismissed it offhand, which I think is a little unfortunate, but I don't know. It's not like it was flawless either. I'm not entirely surprised that it is meeting this sudden and untimely end. So what happened in these last final chapters? They had fighting, lots and lots of fighting. They have their time skip. They are now at war with like the main force of the Dracarchs, the villainous alien race. There's a sense that they've kind of lost their humanity in this fight because they as well keep eating Dracarch hearts to become more powerful. Gonron himself had eaten 107 hearts, which of course hints that soon he will eat his 108th, a very symbolic number in Buddhism and stuff, the transcendence of samsara, the overcoming of earthly temptations and stuff. we didn't really get to that. There's kind of like a major war going on between these two factions. It did feel kind of tonally unique, I think, insofar as even though they were very clearly speedrunning to the end and had like skipped past the vast majority of the journey that took you to these scenes, they were still kind of acting like it had the emotional weight that it would have were these things occurring at like chapter 70, which is bold to say the least. It's kind of a gambit. But that kind of worked for me because at least it was substantial, at least it was something, and it had like ideas and emotional overtones. For example, there's a scene where Oma, the egg, is dying and has a vision of being in this kind of like nirvana afterlife and seeing his dead father and then willing himself to return to life. And I thought this was actually like really well done, a really kind of interesting, beautiful scene. But clearly they had this vision in mind, and it was a very well realized vision. They just thought it was going to happen, at like chapter 70. And that it would have all of the weight and significance of building up to that for 70 chapters instead of 18 chapters. So kind of tragic in that I think they showed off a lot of other compelling ideas like that too. They also seem to be kind of flirting with the idea that this could just be an unhappy ending, which would track with the generally dismal, violent, disgusting tone of the series. They started hinting that it was like, oh, well, the humans might actually just lose, and this is kind of the final bastion of resistance of the humans. Oma hatches, but maybe that's not enough. Oma hatching also looked very cool. That was definitely also a scene that they had planned well in advance and hoped that would take place, 5-6 volumes in a really hype moment. Alas, we don't really have the juice behind it. And then in the finale chapter 2, they showed off like a lot of ideas. The depiction of the final boss's castle looked awesome. We get this like rapid fire barrage of a lot of the final lieutenants. They look awesome. It turns out the Drakkar King is like living in peace with a small collective of humans and has a totally different perspective on this war, where they see the humans as the instigators and the aggressive party, and they're saying if once we wipe out all of the remaining evil humans, we can finally live on peace on this earth with like the good humans. And I was like, whoa, like I don't know if that's intended to be a twist or just kind of a gray area thing where we understand their perspective, but their perspective is wrong. Obviously, there's like a lot of hypocrisy here because they're out there just wiping out humans en masse. But we didn't really get to find out exactly where that was all going. His sister, you remember this whole mission was to save his sister, was just chilling and living peacefully there too. I don't know, just a lot of really cool ideas, a lot of really gnarly stuff right at the end that it felt like maybe they had been saving to kind of drip into other chapters to give them some spice, just some really grotesque, fucked up imagery and designs and stuff. And then they just kind of spam it all here, which I think kind of, fair enough. And then it's something that I've seen in a few of these kind of prematurely canceled Battle Shonen. Mama Yu had this, and Do Ron had this, where the final chapter is just like, all right, now it's time to fight the big boss. Because they know they're going to get a Tankobon finale chapter, and that's where the actual final boss fight will happen. So hopefully I'll get a chance to read that. Like I said, overall, I did really enjoy this series. I think it's very unique. It's not just within Jump, but in general. The art style that a lot of people decried as being kind of like sloppy and amateur, definitely had some parts where it looked a little rushed, but I think that just kind of added to it too. It had like a real looseness that contrasted nicely when you had, these more elaborate, detailed, very grotesque designs as well. Just kind of gave the whole thing this feeling of free formness. It's almost hallucinatory or dreamlike, that combination. Yeah. So I don't know. I was very happy with this finale too, and even though I think it's kind of ridiculous to have we're about to have our final battle finale. In a sense, you could say the final magazine chapter is just an ad for the Tankobon, so you can read the final chapter. But hey, that's the rules of the game, that's like the meta. And I think they played it very well and genuinely intrigued me with that final chapter, just stuffed full of ideas and hints and promises. We will give this an A+. Really good stuff. Let's move on. So I decided to sort the rest of the series. Usually I just sort the rest of the series, besides like new series, dying series, in a random order. This month, I decided to organize them based on how long I think they'll run. So, the Mage Next Door, turns out, is in fact ending like tomorrow. I didn't know that, but I could see it coming. The writing was on the wall. They were fighting the big final boss guy. And again, kind of a shame. I enjoyed this one. Also making it just the 21 chapters. They're not quite under 21 club, but they're damn close. Very clearly moving towards the ending, just kind of rapidly rising up the ranks of bad guy. They definitely wanted this to be a much more kind of slice of life story. I think probably the model they had in mind was almost closer to Witch Watch, where the battle arcs happen infrequently, and they're spaced out with a lot of just kind of magical, slice of life, down-to-earth comedy stuff. And I would have really enjoyed that. I think if this series had been able to get enough of a fan base and hit its stride, and really focused in on its sense of humor and its characters and just the way they depict magic and this whole concept of him just having magics that are convenient to him and just wanting to use magic to be lazy, but then all these magic having all these other side effects and stuff and other ways of applying it. I think that could have been actually pretty great. But in this month, they decide to, again, a scene that I think they were planning on having happen like 100 chapters in, where he abandons all of his magic of convenience, relinquishes all of it, and instead chooses his one battle magic, knowing that he'll have to do some serious fighting. I think would have hit a lot harder had we, more than just a dozen chapters of him using those convenient magics. But whatever. Then battle. The other humans do some battling. Bigger and bigger bad guys start showing up. Again, like Gonron Egg, they took the somewhat bold strategy of just kind of doing all of the emotional moments of, acknowledgement and drawing upon the history of the series and making grand proclamations around what he's learned living with humans and blah, blah, blah. As if we'd spent years together with these characters, but, whatever. I think they still did a good job with those moments. It's still pretty fun. And I like this series' style for doing battles, too. It's not the most unique thing ever, especially now that the main character has also swapped out for just boom blast type magic instead of his kind of martial style, reinterpreting silly things as attacks type style. But just kind of like the very kinetic and sketchy art style and the way they choreograph it and the way the magic attacks are kind of focalized and stuff, I really enjoy. So, I don't know. We'll read the final chapter tomorrow, say goodbye to our lovable Mage Next Door. Too good for this world. Or not really, I don't know. It was good, though. I think it was alright. We will give it an A for the month, and see how it finishes tomorrow. Next, Hero Girl and Demon Lord Call It Quits, I think, is also building to a finale. I think we've confirmed 3 new series on the horizon, and then maybe also Hunter x Hunter returning. So there may be a need to get 4 spots free, and I think if that is the case, this batch will get completely wiped out. Gonron Egg, Mage Next Door, and Hero Girl and Demon Lord all debuted right around the same time, and they might all end right around the same time too. It seems like they are really gearing up for kind of the finale arc of this series, which is, of course, turning the Demon Lord into a human and then the main character dating him, which I still kind of feel like it's a little problematic, maybe. It's just a little strange, to be sure. Here, they cue up another element of that, which is not only did he used to be a human, he used to be just like a totally innocent person. And all of the violence attributed to him is just due to a misunderstanding of the contemporary people at the time of the creation of the Demon Lord and the original hero, which is like her ancestor. This is meant to be kind of tragic, which again, I think maybe if the series had run for a lot longer before we learned this, it might have been. We'd have a real sympathy for these characters and stuff, but instead it just kind of feels a little strange. So they have this little arc of going back into her memories to learn this stuff. Then more stuff kind of around just their current relationship. Their friends thinking that they're going on a date and spying on them. Trying to make him laugh. You're kind of like classic gag comedy, rom-com comedy kind of jokes and tropes and chapters, which is like, okay, I'm fine with that stuff. I don't think this is like the most amazing example of it, but this idea of like fantasy rom-com, it's out there and I enjoy it, and it's not like uniquely bad. I think the series just kind of ranges from like passable comedy to confusing but at least interesting attempts to break out of that space and to kind of justify its own premise and explore its own premise more. And both of those modes are just okay. Then her mom shows up, who turns out to be like way stronger than any of the heroes as a mage. The Demon Lord is terrified of her, which I thought was a fun kind of running joke. And then she very explicitly sets up, like, okay, we're heading into the endgame arc. There is a major unprecedented crisis coming, and you and the Demon Lord will have to, like, work together to solve it, or something like that. So I imagine this will probably get, like, 3 more chapters. Demon Lord and hero solve crisis. You have to use all of your magic in order to stop this from happening. Cliffhanger. Next chapter, the day is saved, but the Demon Lord is, like, dead, it seems. Oh, wait, he came back, he's a human. Cliffhanger. Oh, you know what? Now that we're a human again, we've just gone back to our same kind of lifestyle. It's cozy, comfy. And you know what? Maybe we'll start dating. Ambiguous ending. That's my call. Those are the next 3 chapters. It'll be a 22 clubber. Or maybe it just gets 2 more and it's also a 21er. At any rate, I don't mean to sound callous talking about this like it's a done deal. I think if somebody was talking about that with a series I really enjoyed, I'd probably get pissed off, so my apologies. I'm not trying to like rage bait or something. It's just kind of how I see it. But we'll see. This series for a while was like really bothering me, but I like it a little more now. We'll give it a B for the month. Okay, now let's talk about Hima-ten, which I could see ending in like a month or 2. It seems like they've really teed up all of the dominoes to start falling one by one. And, you know, you could look at something like Nisekoi and say the same thing. And then Nisekoi, at any point at which you say that, it runs for like another 3 years after that. That is the grand paradox of Nisekoi. Here, though, I think they've committed a little harder. They've started doing a few scenes that are a little more untake-backable. And I think they're doing like a good job of them too. They're giving them the proper weight and significance. They're really caring about the characters. They're not doing a lot of the cliches of misunderstanding a confession and having to repeat a confession and convenient excuses to delay confessions and stuff like that. They might swerve in that direction and go for a misguided extension, but so far, no. They instead have been very forcefully subverting drama and preventing drama through communications, through people resolving to honor their own feelings. There's a line that I really liked, where he's considering maybe not confessing after all, because he feels like it's going to cause problems for everybody. And the line said to him is... Or wait, no, I think Kana is hearing this. Anyway, somebody tells one of them. I didn't make a note of it. You don't want the words you've held on to since middle school disappear without saying them. That's nice, you know? I'd say if anything, it's like maybe a little too drama-free. It's like becoming almost unrealistically drama-free. Because stuff like the whole potential scandal of them getting photographed together, you know what? That's no problem. This whole idea that you're going to cause a lot of hurt by prioritizing your own feelings when those will inevitably cause conflict with others. They take the extremely emotionally mature approach of just like, well, sometimes that is how it is, and you just have to do the right thing anyways. Which I think is fair, but I think it also would have been totally fine to spice things up a little bit more. You know, it's like so many rom-com, the pendulum swings way too far the other way with just like forced drama and characters acting irrational and just complete nonsense. The pendulum is very, very far on the other side, but I think the sweet spot is maybe just a little bit more in the middle. But whatever. Nice stuff. I also kind of like just the discussion of some of the fundamental aspects of a lot of rom-coms that often are just sort of like accepted as what makes series work, but aren't really ever discussed explicitly. For example, this idea that he had a crush on Kana before he met either of the other two characters. It's like unfair to them, right? In a sense. The hell just made noise? It's kind of unfair to them. Because how are they supposed to, like, win? And a lot of other rom-coms, they just kind of, like, don't really acknowledge this and act like, well, you know, it's plausible. He'll just change his mind on who he has a crush on. That was the entire thing the Nisekoi was pushing the entire time. Whereas here, they complain about it, and they're just like, yeah, it's just unlucky, and it sucks. If we had met him at another time in his life, or if we had met him and he just didn't happen to like this other girl or whatever, things could have been totally different for us. And I think that's a very real and fair thing to complain about, is just kind of circumstances in life like that, right? But then they get over it, too. They don't become, like, bitter incels. And they don't try to, like, sabotage things. And they don't do, like, we'll give him an amnesia potion and make him forget about Kana. Which, lesser rom-coms, they would go for something stupid like that. Yeah, I don't know. And then stuff around, like, Kana... I keep saying Kana. I meant... What's her name? I'm mixing up the names. I'm sorry. It's probably confusing. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? Kana is the younger girl. The booby girl. I kept saying Kana when I meant Kanai. Anyways, so Kana is the one that's already confessed to him that he doesn't have a crush on. That he actually rejects in these chapters, which I think was also handled very, very well. And they just kind of have a very frank and honest conversation about all of this stuff. And, like, you know, the awkwardness of having romantic feelings for somebody that only sees you platonically, but could we still be friends? And talking about all these other hypotheticals, and do you think you would have liked me under those circumstances? And blah, 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 blah. Like, I kind of liked it because it had, like, a very realistic sort of selfishness on her part, where she just needed to know these things. And on his part, too, a realistic sense of just wanting to navigate this very cleanly and definitely having some sorts of feelings for her. Definitely a feeling of attraction or whatever. But also ultimately knowing that he needs to, like, let her down. I don't know. I feel like it grappled with the full complexity of that situation, while still having all the characters act very emotionally maturely and sensibly, without any forced drama or whatever. And yeah, now it kind of feels like we've finished the Kana route, and it was way better than I could have expected, because I thought that character was just going to be fan service. And now we just have the final two girls, and we're going to get little arcs for each of them. And yeah, I would say maybe 2 months out from a finale, which is great. I'm all for it. A rom-com that runs around 100 chapters and has just great arcs and doesn't feel like it's just repeating itself over and over and over again. Isn't doing all sorts of tedious stuff to extend its runtime. More of that, please. I absolutely love it. Okay, so we will give it a B+ for the month. Really, really solid stuff. Okay. Next, let's talk about Sakamoto Days, which is in its ongoing big final saga. We just kind of have a finite number of characters having big fights. And once those are all done, I think the series is just done too. I don't think there's going to be any sort of like bonus arc. I don't think it's going to return to just slice of life shenanigans. Although I started reading Sakamoto Holidays, which is like an alternate universe spin-off series that's a lot more comedic and goofy and low stakes and less violence. And it's really, really fun. And I kind of hope that there's at least one chapter's worth of kind of more typical slice of life shenanigans with a happily retired from Mortal Kombat Sakamoto or something. Just the kind of like a final acknowledgement of the series' origins. Because right now, it's very, very far from those origins. Sakamoto doesn't even appear this month. All of the fighting is really crazy, really over the top. Really good stuff, too. It's not my absolute favorite mode of the series, insofar as it's very much about these kind of just like 1v1 fights. And those are, you know, awesome choreography, awesome stunts. Stunts, that's an odd word to use. I guess choreography is, too. But you know what I'm saying. Lots of cool little set pieces and weaponry and everything, but it doesn't really have the sense of, like, scale of some of the previous arcs. It doesn't have the sense of, like, chaos and melee. Instead, we're just mostly watching Osagiri and Shishiba fighting two other assassins. It has, like, a nice, fun, kind of bantery, but sentimental feeling to it, where the characters are kind of trying to act cool and aloof, but for Shishiba, this is kind of a major moment for him to take stock in his whole hitman career and Osagiri's career as well, and Osagiri herself revealing herself to be even more of like an insane demon woman than we even anticipated. Lots of neat stuff. I like the villain too, the electricity guy, who is trying to find sources of charge wherever he can. Getting defibrillated in the most recent chapter I thought was great. So yeah, I don't know. Just like very strong stuff from the series. As I said, not my absolute favorite, but very, very solid. And I like, too, for the pacing of this arc has been, like, all over the map. From, like, very minor side characters getting long-ass fights to suddenly kind of the big climactic moment of Sakamoto confronting Slur happening in, like, half a chapter, you know? Just very, like, inconsistent pacing, I guess I'd say. Some rushing, some dragging. This, to me, is, like, the sweet spot. This is, like, fairly major side characters in a substantial battle that lasts multiple chapters, that doesn't feel like it's just kind of a means to an end, but is just enjoyable in and of itself, where the main goal is just taking out a powerful opponent, and not some sort of like convoluted multi-stage thing of, well, we're fighting this cop that was trying to stop the van that's being used as an ambulance to take you to the JCC where you're going to be revived. They kind of scrapped all of that. Sakamoto just woke up. So yeah. I think this is kind of the mode they wanted to be in from the start, honestly. This arc, I feel like, has had a bit of a squandered potential, but I think it's hitting some good strides now. We'll give it an A+. But yeah, like I said, this is the endgame state. This is definitely the final arc. We only have so many more fights, so enjoy them. Then I think the next series to end will be Blue Box. We just had one of the surest signs that the series is ending, which is the title drop. They did kind of a funny two-stage title drop, where first they're looking at the aquarium and comparing it to the gymnasium. and talking about how, the feeling of all the different types of fish that are all doing different stuff, but they all happen to be in the aquarium at the same time, is a lot like all the different student athletes that just happen to be in the gym at the same time, and that just like the fish, they're growing up and they're living there and stuff. And I was like, oh, and the aquarium is the blue box. Oh my god, I get it. And then in the next chapter, Taiki just straight up is like, the gym is like the aquarium. It's our blue box. And then it says blue box. But I was like popping off for that too. Because it's all the more hype. This is the beauty of manga and of shonen and stuff, right? It's like, a lot of other media, to do something subtly and then to do something explicitly right after, it'd be like, in case you didn't get it, it's very obnoxious and it like detracts from the whole experience. But in manga, the second time you do it, you can add the element of more hype. And then it takes on another quality. And the fact that it was like, you don't even want to say foreshadowed, but just already said, but slightly more abstractly, like makes it more hype. So that was sweet. That was where it ended this month. I loved those two chapters. Banger after banger. Aquarium date, always a banger. Heading into the prefectural tournament. Taiki's final year playing high school badminton. Probably his prospects of playing it in college, semi-pro, and then going on to be a pro are somewhat hinged on his performance here, so it really does feel like a lot has been built up into it. But of course, similarly, other stuff being built up of all the other competitors too. His senpai that are talking about how inspirational he was and saying that he needs to win for them too, going, I'm sorry, that's probably a lot of pressure, and then him going, it is, but pressure becomes responsibility, which becomes strength, which is a lesson he learned in previous chapters, very nicely reapplied here. Very Kino. Also setting up a lot more of Haruto, his rival within his school, his desperation saying, if I make it to nationals, will you go out with me? To Hina-chan. Hina-chan saying, added a question. I thought that was great. That was very based. Lots of really nice parallels between Haruto and Taiki. Haruto being fueled entirely by bitterness of jealousy of his older brother. Just like a different path that Taiki could have walked, not trying to like invalidate it, not trying to be like Haruto is a moron and that's why he's gonna lose, but rather saying like, this is also a type of weight, this is also something that can make you strong. We're just gonna need to see which one makes you stronger, I guess. And then setting up his older brother Yusa more and more as like the final boss of this series, the thing that's gonna stand between Taiki and Nationals. Maybe his major opponent within Nationals too. I don't really know how it's all gonna go. It feels like the school tournament, obviously the battle against Kyo was like a major emotional decisive moment. Here they're gonna have another battle against Haruto, which I'm sure will be a major decisive moment. And then they save the battle against Yusa for Nationals, I guess. But I don't really know how these tournaments like work. I'm sure it's been explained somewhere in the manga, but it's like, does he not have to beat Yusa as well to go to Nationals? Because aren't they in the same prefecture? I don't know. Or maybe he loses to Yusa in prefecturals, but they both qualify for Nationals is like a thing that can happen. And then round 2 in Nationals. There's no way he doesn't beat Yusa at some point, right? Or I don't know, maybe I'm being naive. At any rate, it's all very interesting. I think it's working really, really well as a sports shonen and setting up these rivalries and setting up moments that you're extremely excited for, not just because of like the character significance, but because you know it's going to be really good badminton action, while also counterbalancing it, as they always do, with just like really nice sentimental human stories about what it means to fully self-actualize, what it means to grow up, what it means to understand yourself, what it means to love, Such good stuff. We'll give it an S for the month. Really, really enjoying it. Let's check my Discord messages quick. Da. See if there's anything. Nothing you can bring. We already have pie. Excellent. Gonna eat some pie later. Okay, next let's talk about Witch Watch, which is also, I think, in its final arc. But I am less sure about that than I am about Sakamoto Days and Blue Box. Here, I know this is going to be like a major climactic battle, and they'll likely resolve this whole situation with Jura, this threat of the resurrection of Jura, the ultimate warlock, which has hung over the series from the very start. That's definitely getting resolved. But it could just run for like 50 more chapters after that, for like an entire other year, just doing wacky comedy shtick. You know? And then maybe having like one more sentimental, more grounded and emotional finale after all that. Because it doesn't quite seem right for it to kind of shift gears into this rarely seen battle shonen mode and then be like, they did it, they punched the bad guy, now we're good. See ya. The series is over. That doesn't seem quite right. And I'm sure all this stuff around Morihito and Nico's, relationship and the form of that and everything, that can't really just happen, He's not going to just beat the bad guy and then be like, smooch, I love you. So I don't know. It's definitely acting like it could end soon. But I think it's not unreasonable to think there's going to be like a little bonus, fun, goofy slice of life after all this. Because this is pretty much all fighting. This is as densely packed with battle shonen stuff as the series has ever been. It's the longest battle-focused arc we've seen, and it's not going to be over for probably a few more chapters at least. Battle, all over the place here. Morihito punches out the bad guy, which is pretty freaking awesome. Lots of really cool parallels too, where different characters in the villains' parties own backstories and trauma, and parental relationships is a major theme, making Morihito fired up because they reflect on his now years of lived experience raising Nico when she got turned into a kid. I really like how they're kind of re-implementing that. They're making that become kind of like a core facet of his character. It wasn't like that was just some strange thing that happened and now he's over it. Really good tension, really good intensity, really good build-up of all these characters. Shikimi too, like the bad guy's leader, I think has a lot of very interesting characterization. He has just this kind of like weird desperation that's revealed to be because he used to be Jura's lover in like a past life, and that's the real reason he's trying to resurrect her. And now we're just kind of in a situation where like everybody knows everything. The sneaking around has ended. As much as I really, really enjoyed the sneaking around stuff too, I liked that there was a good mix of like good twists and bad twists, like the good guys had all sorts of fun subversions to get the upper hand. That made them feel almost like the bad guys in a way, because they were the ones using like trickery and deception and schemes. But I think for true battle shonen catharsis, you end up just having to do all good guys versus all bad guys battle. And we've gotten into that mode now, and I really do think this series has great fights. Which is crazy to see when it's mostly a gag comedy, but I really am enjoying seeing Keigo and Wolf fight. I think the Khan fight is going to be awesome. Like, a lot of really cool stuff is going to happen here. I'm sure it's going to get worse before it gets better for the good guys, though. I'm sure there's going to be a scene where Nico really has to be put to the test on whether or not she can use her magic to harm people, whether she's capable of that and the ramifications of that, and I'm sure it'll end with them saving her in time that she doesn't have to, but lots of really powerful, decisive moments to come, I'm sure. And then we need to balance that out with just as many shenanigans chapters that is the Kenta Sensei special. So looking forward to that just as much. We will give it an S for the month. Really good stuff. Next, so those are the series that I think are in like their final arcs to whatever extent. But I think there's also very likely some other new series are just going to get axed before we even get to the end of those. And this is one of them that I could really see it going either way. I think my own feelings on it are also very plausibly wildly swinging either way. The first chapter of this month, chapter 5, was horrible. It was like slop from a slop bucket. Just like the worst of this sort of isekai, no ideas, harem, fan service, goofy nonsense. It actually got quite a lot of heat on Twitter because they seem to have like straight-jacketed a character where this girl who was at very least bisexual and obsessed with treating women like princesses because she saw herself as a knight from this like knight series of novels she really likes, is saved by Kinato. Kinato uses magic to help her out and unlock her full potential and blah 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 blah. So then in the aftermath of that, she sees Kinato as the knight, she sees herself as the princess, and then all of the other women she sees, she no longer sees as princesses. She's no longer interested in wooing them and sweeping them off their feet. And a lot of people were like, oh, they've, like, you know, destroyed this character's sexuality. I don't know if I would go that far, because it wasn't like they ever really treated that seriously to begin with. It was just a gag to be like, oh, she's obsessed with being a knight, but she's actually a woman. Which is already like a problematic gag, but I think it's less problematic than the idea of like destroying this character's sexuality. They, instead of retconning her lesbianism or whatever, not retconning, but you know, destroying it, they just never took it seriously to begin with. Which, yeah, is still very problematic. Not great. I think it's just stupid too, because obviously, the much funnier way to do this whole setup is that she now sees Kinato as like a rival knight and acts like they have to compete in gallantness and seducing women and, you know, chivalry and everything. And Kinato is confused and unaware of this. But no, they couldn't do that, even though that's obviously way funnier and more interesting, because she has to have a crush on him. Because this is going to turn into a harem manga at this rate. Which I predicted from the start it would be, because all of this Isekai zero ideas fantasy garbage turns out to be harems, because that's kind of the only area where they have any sort of originality, although it's not much originality, is in coming up with women to throw themselves at the MC. So yeah, really didn't like that chapter. Just like bad comedy, nothing interesting, and just confirmation of all my worst fears. But then after that, it improved a lot. And I think now it's having some of the better chapters the series has had at all. This whole little arc of going to this village, trying to figure out where this inventor has gone, having to battle with her inventions that have gone rogue. The subplot of this all kind of spiraling out of a desire to protect the crystal forest, which was being illegally mined. So you've got a bunch of different kind of elements all being brought together due to this physical location. They meet this elite rival guild that's been brought out to try to help with the mining of the crystal mine. So there's like a perceived cooperation, but then an inner conflict, but then in the core of that as well, a deeper moral alignment. Lots of little discoveries and adventures and some fun side characters introduced. I think the setting up of this rival guild too was good, and not very much fan service. Not an introduction of any women that immediately fall head over heels for the MC, but just like some good action scenes, some good sentimentality. He didn't do his stupid orb ball attack when they were fighting, he was entirely on the support role, which again is like the only unique thing about this series. That was totally ruined when he just started like throwing energy balls around. So this is just way, way, way better than anything else the series had done until now. It really felt like they were very deliberately changing gears. Maybe they got very bad reaction from the mess of Chapter 5. It's still quite generic, obviously. Like, wow, a crystal forest, a madcap inventor that makes automatons. Yeah, we've seen these before. But they managed to at least aim for, like, some sort of sentimentality and a sense of, like, mystery and stuff. Because even if it's all familiar elements, it doesn't mean that you know what the mystery is. It doesn't mean that you should act in some sort of strange, cynical way and, you know, derive some sort of in-on-the-joke joy of depriving the audience of any sort of mystery by being like, it's a crystal forest, you know how this goes. It's a corrupt mayor, you know how this goes. But instead, playing those elements straight, which the series really hadn't done up until then. It was all just like, it's an adventurers guild, you know. There's ranks, you know. Here it was like genuinely, oh, this is the world that we're in. Let's like discover it together, which is way, 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 way better. So yeah, we'll give it a B- for the month. Dragged down by that first chapter, but then it really steadily recovered. It could get stupid again. I'm not saying it couldn't. This could just be a fluke. But there was some really bad instincts displayed in the first few chapters that they stopped replicating, and that to me is a good sign. And that to me suggests that this could have quite a bit of a run. So we're putting it over here. Next is a series that I'm really, really enjoying, and I hope actually gets a pretty substantial run. But at the same time, I think it hasn't, like, tried to affix itself to, like, 100-chapter schedule. Alien Headbutt, it's keeping things very simple. It's still keeping this entire mission focalized to, I'm going to wipe out all the aliens on this island and save my family, which is a pretty big mission. But I think a lot of other shonen series, even at this early stage, would be having little overtures and suggestions and hints of deeper mysteries and enemies hiding behind the enemies and things to just basically make it clear, oh, what you're reading right now, this is just part 1, this is just the first arc, and it's going to go in so many other directions. No. Not even the shadow of a hint of that here. Instead, it is so relentlessly focused, so unapologetically focused on this dude is gonna wrestle aliens. That's it. Do you really need anything more? Does it really need to go further than that? And I love it. My only concern is that it strays too far from the idea of it being wrestling, you know? Like, the idea that he is a pro wrestler and he's kind of seeing these things through the lens of matches and doing all sorts of real wrestling moves. I think that's awesome. I think the more they can stick to that, the better. I did kind of like, you know, introducing his friend who's like a hunter, and then he's bringing his own expertise and they're teaming up to kind of abuse the mechanics of the aliens. I really do like this stuff around like observing the aliens' behavior and then coming up with countermeasures and stuff. That also does still feel like wrestling, though. That's the way that they storytell in wrestling matches, is, oh, okay, my opponent has like an overwhelming strength in this area. How can I take advantage of the weak spots? How can I take advantage of circumstantial things? How can I interfere with this game plan? The fact that he's a heel wrestler, too, this is often how the heel is depicted, as, you know, having to come up with some sort of underhanded or exploitive method to tackle a physically superior opponent who ought to win. That's often how heel matches are booked, especially with this type of heel who's like a real dirty fighting heel. They do get into his like wrestling persona. A great thing too about how he wanted to be a wrestler that can do everything, and they told him that's stupid. The whole ideal of wrestling is that you have a character that has displayed strengths, so that when you hit the things that you're especially good at, the audience understands the significance of that. But he's adamant. He wants to just be the all-rounder wrestler, which is dumb. But then they're like, okay, you can do that, but it has to feel like a desperate heel. You have to be the sort of heel persona that's willing to do anything to win. It's not that you have strengths in every area. It's that you're opportunistic and you're always trying to find the angle that might get you the W. And that is how he's fighting the aliens too. Brilliant, man. It comes together. It comes together. And then they hit you with the titular alien headbutt where he slams his head into another alien's head and uses that alien's hardened carapace to damage a second alien. Sick nasty, man. It's all good. It's all good. I think as long as they kind of keep returning to the wrestling focus for like these climactic battles, then they can diversify. Then they can talk about, other types of combat, like hunting. It's a type of fighting. Other characters, their backstories and stuff. That's good exploration. Kind of just going to a place, contrasting that with wrestling, then coming back to wrestling. I love it. I love it. I love it. And again, that's all they're doing. They're just fighting aliens. What's going to happen now that he's beaten this alien? They're going to rescue some people and go, now we got to go over here. There's some people that need rescuing, and there's some aliens that need fucking headbutting. And that's great, man. That's great. This plus great art, great alien designs. I don't know. I really can't say too much good about it. We'll give it an A for the month. Although the way I was praising it, you'd think it probably should be higher than that. Maybe it should be. I don't know. The more I talk about it, the more I think I like it. So very excited to see where it goes from here. All right, next, talk about Ruri Dragon. This one, I think we are kind of in final things happening, which sounds strange to say because there's so many different directions the series could go. And I'm not saying for sure that it won't go in any of those other directions, but I do kind of think if she meets a dragon, if she meets like a real dragon and we get to see it, we get to see the dragon, there's not that much else they can do. That's kind of like the big finale. And I also kind of feel like when the KyoAni adaptation comes, which I think is like next year or maybe even the year after, they are going to try to do like a full and complete manga in the adaptation. So that's another kind of clue that maybe it's wrapping up soon. But when I say soon, I mean soon in terms of chapter count, that maybe there'll only be 3 or 4 more chapters. When will we get those chapters? I don't know. We only got one this month, but it was a great chapter. They are on the road to meet the dragon. I really like the very laid-back travel scenes with her and her mom. All the scenes with her and her mom, I think, are great. It's very down-to-earth, very fun. I really like both of their characters. And then some really excellent stuff as they head out into this remote mountain. And Ruri starts to have the sense that the dragon is there. She can start to, like, feel it on all sorts of very subtle subconscious levels. And the way they depict that and the way they show this, like, rural mountainside and stuff, I thought was really, really, really phenomenal. I'm very excited to see the dragon, let me tell you. I'm sure it's gonna happen. They can't fake us out again. If the next chapter starts and it's Ruri sitting in the classroom and going, well, then after that I saw the dragon. And they went, wow, what was the dragon like? And she went, where do I start, man? And they go, I don't know. Are you overwhelmed having to explain what the dragon was like to so many people? Yeah, this is like my 5th time through this conversation. That's okay. We can wait on the deets. How about some Mickey D's? And they go get McDonald's. I'm gonna throw my computer out the fucking balcony, man. I need to see this dragon. Stop fucking with me. I'm just kidding. I'm sure whatever they do, it'll be interesting. But I think this is by far the most they've, like, hyped up a moment like this. So I would be very disappointed if we didn't see the gosh darn dragon. We'll give it an A+ for this chapter, though. I really, really enjoyed it. I think just the road trip energy they were able to capture here, too, was very fun. Okay. Next, Under Doctor, another new series that, based on table of contents, I think has a little bit more motion than Kinato's Magic and Alien Headbutt. I think if anything from this batch is going to survive, it's likely to be this. But I still don't think it's that likely. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if this ends in the 20s and the 30s, something like that. It went in a couple interesting directions this month. I had been kind of disappointed with it in that it has, like, the trapping and theming of a medical manga, but really didn't seem that interested in being about medicine at all. Instead, it was just a guy who you're told is a doctor and has supernatural powers and occasionally does, like, a off-screen doctor thing, but in most of the time is just, like, fighting people. Here, there was actually not that much fighting. Instead, it was much more of a zoom in on him as a character, his life as a surgeon, a time that a surgery didn't go as planned. Even though the surgery was successful, the patient still died. Some actual medical moments within here. Some very grounded character work in him trying to reckon with this failure. All sorts of good stuff. They introduced this character of the formerly mute assassin who now wants to be the doctor's apprentice. I thought that was kind of fun and is a good kind of like on-ramping character that, you know, the lens of this guy who doesn't know anything about him is a way for the reader to get more invested in him too, which is good. It's something every manga should really consider, is which character is most aligned to the reader's vantage point in terms of knowledge and stuff, and how can you kind of bloom the story from that perspective. Really, really nice stuff. I also liked, too, that we're kind of starting another more battle-focused arc, where another assassin shows up who has a lot of pretty impressive things he's done already, that we're at least meant to think is maybe the first, like, real credible, tough opponent for Air Doctor. That will actually lead to maybe some more substantial fight scenes than the Doctor just kind of like dispatching people instantly. I liked it because this was a setup that carried in over from the previous arc. The bad guy of the previous arc, who the Doctor didn't want to treat, is the one that's sending this assassin at him. That's nice. That's nice. That's nice. Plus all the scenes in the casino and stuff where they're trying to get this guy to go kill the Doctor. All of that was very fun too. I really liked him climbing up the elevator shaft. All good stuff. Really starting to hit some more substantial beats of Battle Shonen, while again, spending time talking about medicine and stuff. I do still kind of feel like they abridged like the surgery scene a bit too much. I don't know if that's maybe due to sensitivities around like gore and stuff in the magazine. People don't want to see like organs and opened carapaces and stuff, but I don't know, man. Jump has run a lot more gnarly than that in the past, and to me, I think that's where a series like this can really shine, is in its depictions of the inner workings of the body and the realities of surgery and stuff. Like, that was something that made... I mean, I'm always going to compare it to Blackjack. They gave this motherfucker the haircut for the reason. They wanted it to compare it to Blackjack. But in Blackjack, they do a lot of that, and it's really cool. It draws upon Tezuka's background as a med student. Was this guy a med student? I don't know. But he sure doesn't draw like a med student. But yeah, I don't know. Some fun stuff. Some good little character moments. The art is alright. I am liking this okay. I think Alien Headbutt I prefer in terms of this batch. It's the one that I hope gets a longer run. But Under Doctor is fine too. We'll give it an A- for the month. Very excited to see how this arc goes. I hope that this opponent actually gives the Doctor some trouble, you know, in terms of combat, just so we can see how like a real fight scene will look in the series. And yeah, more surgery, please. I sound like such a freak. Okay, next is Nue's Exorcist. This is a series that hasn't really given any indications that it's wrapping up. They are battling against the Hyo now, which is like the definite endgame of the whole series, but there's a lot of Hyo. They have to just kind of go through all of them. So it could take a while. At the same time, I guess I'm kind of hoping that it'll end. Because this is my least favorite thing in Jump for sure. But this might shock you. This month, I thought it was pretty good, okay? The whole month was just battling against Soranaki, and I think this series, where it shines most, is just in these battle scenes. I don't think they're anywhere near the best battle scenes in the magazine right now. I don't even think they're, like, totally unique either, but they do at least have some unique visual imagery, and when the characters are fighting, they can't be doing other stupid things that I don't like. Gokuro transforms and powers up again, now getting Gekka's power. Soranaki, even though I made a big deal about the whole full page reaction NL type joke where he realizes that he can't regenerate, he regenerates anyways, which is stupid as hell. Soranaki turns out to have, like, multiple personalities, and they split Soranaki into his two personalities, and then the nice Soranaki is, like, helping them. I thought all of that was very stupid too, that they actually for the very first time had what I thought was a pretty interesting, morally complex character in Soranaki. I just kind of like the idea of this strange, inhuman force that just is obsessed with change and excitement and growth, that at some times this leads him to do nice things, at other times this leads him to do horrific things, but all of it is driven by the same overwhelming, insatiable urge to evolve and to change and everything. We find out that he's like an alien species that is just sort of being enshrined as a Hyo, but that his entire core being is around this urge to change. That I actually thought was a little interesting, but to have all of that, to have that set up, and to have that character writing, and to actually do a pretty good job of it, to give examples of that in good and bad scenes, and to kind of leave it to the reader to figure out the through narrative here, and then to be like, well, no, actually it's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. There's good Soranaki and evil Soranaki. Stupid, I don't know. But it's fine. The action is still pretty good. Although I will point out this is another situation where it seems like Gokuro powered up and he's gonna kick some ass. But instead it's like somebody's just telling him what to do. Dude never fights his own battles. It's just this feeling of like a pathetic power fantasy where he never really like musters in, you know, a new level of resolve or courage or whatever. He never like grits and pushes through. It's always just like something happens in his periphery where out of like a totally unearned harem style love for him, another girl goes like, I will become your strength. I don't know. Some good stuff though. Some good stuff. Moreover, busy fighting means not time to do something stupid. So we give it a B- for the month, which I think is the highest grade it's gotten since I started these videos. I think if I had judged the entire series, some of the earlier arcs probably would have gotten up to the B+, before it really got like terminal light novel harem disease. But this is the high watermark in a while. Okay. Next, let's talk about someone Hertz. I also don't see this ending anytime soon. I think they've resolved at least to make it an entire year within the world of the series, but they've also been kind of syncing up a lot of chapters. Actually, no, not really. I was going to say they've been trying to sync up chapters with real-world timelines, but that's been totally inconsistent. At any rate, they want to make it another year in the story of the series for sure, so they can have another listener Koishen, and our main character can redeem himself. And I imagine they'd be happy if that took about a year of real chapter time as well. Even though, yeah, they're not actually syncing things up. Why was I saying that? This whole month was like summer festival. It's summer break for them right now. At any rate, I think, though, this series has the good graces to not go much further than that. A lot of these 1v1 rom-com series will run for something shy of 100 chapters. And then they have kind of the big confession moments and stuff. And then maybe another 10 or so chapters of them dating and getting used to that. And then just like a happily ever after ending that sometimes coincides with like graduation or something very sentimental. I think that's the model that this series is going to go on too. They're not going to try to just belabor it. They're not just going to try to rerun the hits over and over and over again. I think it has a good sensibility about this. And they're not just doing like endless baiting too, where they're not just trying to act like, oh, maybe the next chapter they'll confess. Oh, maybe the next chapter they're going to start dating. No. That's the beauty of the slice of life 1v1 rom-com. It's like, you're content, right? You just like seeing them hang out and have little cute moments. Great. So are we. We're not going to try to bait you. It's not going to be anything that it isn't. Just settle in. We'll do this for a while. And then right before you could possibly get sick of the characters, we'll advance things and say see ya. So yeah, it's nice stuff. As I said, this is all summer break chapters. Volunteering at a radio station, hanging out at the restaurant, going to a festival, which was a little 3-chapter arc. Really nice stuff. Nice moments of intimacy, nice moments of memory making. And the connection to this whole radio show thing, I think, has been maintained in a pretty fun way, where they're always using the radio show's prompts as justification for meeting up and going out and stuff, but I think it's becoming clear to them and clear to the reader, too, that this is just a pretense, and really they just want to spend time together. So it's never going to feel, like, restricted by that premise, I think, but instead that will just be kind of a recurring touchstone. I had, like, a funny moment where... So they're at the festival, and she's just, like, listening to old episodes of the radio show. Or I think it's just one episode that she had missed. She's listening to it. And he's, like, listening to it again. Because they got separated. They're trying to find each other. And then the radio gives an anecdote about losing his family at a festival. And then finding the family in line for something. I can't remember what. Some snack. And then they go looking for each other in that line. Thinking that maybe the other one remembered that from the radio show. And it's cute. It's cute. And again, a little touchstone. Go back to the premise of the series. But reading it, I was like, oh my god, man, they really love this show. It seemed like kind of absurd to me. And there was like this kind of weird feeling of dissonance where I was like, series is actually just about two crazy people that are completely obsessed with this radio show. And then I had such a moment of self-awareness and like humble pie eating. Because, like, a day later, my boyfriend was over. We were watching Northern Lion. Northern Lion makes a reference to something in his life. And my boyfriend says, like, oh, yeah, that's calling back to, like, such and such a time. Do you remember the video where he was like, blah, 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 blah? And I was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, it's the same. We're doing the same thing. We're just like the Someone Hertz is. We're just obsessed with Northern Lion instead of this radio show. So, you know, it's actually, like, extremely realistic. Man, parasociality. It's a hell of a thing, huh? I resisted for a long time, I think. This is the first streamer I've actually watched, like, a lot of. Is Northern Lion. But he's like a real human being. That's what I like about him. Anyways, we will give this a B+ for the month. Really solid stuff. Nothing mind-blowing. Nothing that brought me to tears. Nothing that made me run around my room going, ah! Which better rom-coms have made me do. But solid stuff. Excited to see where it goes. Next, Shinobi Undercover. I don't think this is going to end, like, anytime soon, really, but they've at least set up the ingredients of what the endgame will look like, in that we know who very likely the big boss is, we know what the final goals of the villains are, and we even know, like, a good litany of the villain henchmen. Right now, though, we are on kind of, like, a tangential story, battling against the Uzen household, which I think strikes a nice balance of not having been set up as a villain before, but then nicely woven into the world building of the series. It makes sense for this villain of a notable ninja household that's secretly evil to exist. And yeah, they could conceivably do a whole bunch of other kind of side stories like this. The world building is such that you could have other threats emerge and it would feel natural. Other, public safety ninjas that are bad too. There's a nice expanse of potential conflict. But I guess kind of the remaining series, this one feels closest to an endgame just because we know what that endgame is going to look like. And yeah, this month was all just battling against the Uzen family. I really like this arc. I think this arc was very, very well done. Like I said last month, I think they should have just delayed things a little bit more, had a little bit more feeling of like ambiguity, a little bit more feeling of like, ooh, where is this going? Who will realize what conflicts will emerge, blah, blah, blah. Instead, it was kind of just like, as soon as they established all the stakes, they instantly switched gears into just fight mode, which, all I'm saying is you read One Piece, learn from One Piece. There should be set up a bit of an ambiguous adventure phase where it's not quite clear how the conflict is going to emerge or shake out, even though on another level it's going to, but where they're trying to solve the problem without just outright battling. And then you go into the outright battling. That middle stage is very important, and I don't see Shonen series attempting it very often. They just do setup. Sometimes they do a great setup. I thought this had great setup. Then they go straight to fighting. And this is good fighting too. I'm not even complaining about the fighting. It's just that middle zone of an arc. A lot of Shonen are just not even attempting these days. Given all that, I think it's very good. I think this is the strongest mode of the series. All the fights were pretty good. The one thing that they did to kind of suggest a sort of middle zone to this arc, having Yodoka inadvertently encounter the heir to the Yuzen family who'd been imprisoned in the basement, and have this whole thing around, can he convince that guy that they're on the same side, or will they end up fighting? Again, it was resolved a little simplistically. They didn't really push that ambiguity. Very quickly, it's just like Yodoka fights him. But I do like all the stuff with Yodoka fighting. I do really like Yodoka's characterization that he keeps saving the enemy from like collapsing buildings and stuff. And they're like, why did you save me? And, the beat of most shonen, they save them and they go, just because you're my enemy doesn't mean I want to see you die, or something like that. But Yodoka, when confronting with this, just goes, I honestly just kind of grab people instinctively when I'm running away. I'm not really thinking about it. And it doesn't make any sense for me to save you. That was good too. Big fighting. The head of the household uses this like mold attack, which at first I was a little disappointed in, because I think this series works better when it's like choreographed martial arts ninja fighting, and less good when it's just like, here's my attack. But they made it feel kind of like creepy and cool. This feeling of mold that's like degrading and stuff. So now it's just going to be battle. All good guys versus all bad guys. The teacher lady shows up, becomes a good guy. Son shows up from the basement, becomes a bad guy. Sure. It's unclear what happened to Yodoka, so that's another bit of an elaboration, something a bit beyond just battle, which is kind of cool. It seems to imply that he lost, which is crazy, but I'm sure he'll pop up again at a decisive moment, and turns out he was just stuck doing something stupid. I will say this, Yodoka's character of being this like ninja savant who really is only good at fighting and just like totally clueless when it comes to anything else, I do like. But when it was paired with the son heir, who's also extremely clueless but extremely powerful, it got to be like a bit much. Where I think that amount of like concentrated stupidity starts to strain till it cracks the plot a little bit. Like, it's funny, sure, but it's like so much of the plotline seemed to hinge on their like mutual stupidity, you know, that you start to just want to give everybody a shake. Yeah, good stuff. Give it an A minus. I imagine this arc is going to wrap up fairly soon. They've got all the major players. They're going to find out that the Uzen family was working in conjunction with these evil rogue ninja squad. And then, yeah, if they want to, they can just segue from that into, like, final boss. We got all this intel on the rogue ninja squad, now we're going to launch a preemptive attack. Or they could dole it out a bit more, you know, have them show up more piecemeal. We will see. We will see. Next, Akane-banashi, which I certainly really hope is not ending soon. But as well, has kind of set the stage for a potential endgame. The 100 Years of Rakugo Festival has the elements of what could be a final arc, if they wanted it to. I sure hope it isn't. I really do. I really hope that this is a very long-running series that just continues watching Akane's evolution as a performer, and we see arcs of her as a Shinuichi, arcs of her as an Okanban, seeing her finally stand triumphant upon the entire Rakugo world even. Who knows? There's so many cool ideas they could do with that. There's so many potential characters to explore. There's so many, you know, other Shinuichi and stuff that we've only seen glimpses of that could have their own arcs. They could do all of that, and I think it would be phenomenal, and I'd love them to. But I think in terms of, like, the absolutely necessary story beats, they're moving through them. Like, not at an insanely fast clip, but they are doing them, and they're not just, you know, only doing side stories. They're only doing tangential things. But basically the ingredients of, like, her learning the constituent stories of Shibuma? Why can't I think of, like, any freaking names right now? The art. The art of her master's master. She's learning, like, 3 foundational stories to be able to tackle that. So we know that's going to happen. One of the stories is God of Death, and we're seeing that in this arc. She's got to make Isho acknowledge her. He kind of already has, but this arc provides an opportunity to do that. If not, the 100 Years of Rakugo Festival thing has an opportunity to do that. She needs to make Shinuichi, but that could even be like a coda to the series. Blah, 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 blah. They have the big emotional climax, and then final chapter, she's become a Shinuichi. That wouldn't be the worst thing either. It's not like we absolutely have to see it actually happen. It just has to have happened by the end of the series. And aside from that, I don't know. There's not really, as I said, defeating Afro, the gluttonous, horrible, annoying king of comedy Afro Man, who is an antagonist at times past. Having him get totally shut down, I think will definitely happen before the series ends, but that could even happen in this arc as well. And kind of a resolution to Akane and Kaisen, which is the main focus point of this arc, is what will probably be their major climactic battle. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if this ends next year, let's say. But I would be disappointed. I hope this becomes a real pillar of Jump. I hope this does all of the things I just talked about, and then says, and that was Act 1. now is Akane's life as a Shinuichi. Sort of like Hinomaru's Sumo, which is an amazing series. Sumo sports manga series, where, I guess this is kind of a minor spoiler, Hinomaru goes through his entire high school career of sumo wrestling, and then it looks like the end of the series, everything has been resolved, every battle has been squared off, everything, you know, totally satisfied, totally complete. And then it's like, guess what, Hinomaru, this marks your entry into the world of the professionals. Could have easily been the final chapter. No, that's like the halfway point. And then there's a whole other saga with multiple arcs, multiple tournaments, multiple events, many, many events of him as a professional sumo wrestler and rising the ranks within that. It's fucking awesome. And that's what I want to see. I want all of this stuff to be resolved. Akane, you have mastered your art. You are now a Shinoichi. And then she's like, all right, now this is where it really starts. 200 more chapters. But we'll see. So yeah, this whole arc is about Akane and Kaisen battling the god of death duet. We didn't quite get there, but we just saw a whole lot of preliminary stuff about the Ishoka. Takes place on a cruise ship, which is crazy. We get to meet a lot of other entertainment world characters and understand their relationship to Rakugo and stuff, which is very fun. Big exploration of Akane and Keisei's relationship, which is very cool. I think they've done a great job having these characters both feel very legitimate in what they're doing, very justified in how much they care about this. Such that if Akane wasn't the protagonist, you would really feel like Keisei was the protagonist, right? Like, he's had that level of arc building. He's had that level of, like, grounding his motivation and stuff. Then the twist where that damn Afro shows up again and tries to spoil the whole thing by just saying what happens in the God of Death story before either of their performances, which is very funny. That bastard. But Akane shakes it off, gets ready to perform. We're gonna see her God of Death first in the God of Death duet, which is kind of interesting because I expect she's gonna win. Not that there's a clear winner or loser like it's a contest, but I think it'll make clear which one of them was able to perform it better. You would think she would go second if she's gonna win, but we'll see. It's very interesting. And then we might see Isho himself perform. We don't know. We are definitely taking another step further towards Shiguma's art. I think there'll be a moment where Akane kind of recognizes the step she's taken closer to that. Shiguma is his name. It's actually in my notes here. Yeah, I don't know. Really, really good stuff. Give it an S+ for the month. I love the series so much. I hope it runs forever. Next, the Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. I also think will run for a long time. They've definitely at least set up one more arc, because we knew there was 3 Supreme Demon Lords, and we've had big arcs around 2 of them now. This is the second one. After it got through that first arc, which definitely felt like the finale, I really think could go for a long time now. It's in just such a great mode. It just understands how the characters should fight and the type of fight scenes to go for and the type of comedy to go for and the type of character writing and all of that stuff. Really, really hitting great strides here. So we know that at least there should be one more Demon Lord battle arc, or Supreme Demon Lord or whatever. And then it became clear to me at some point that the title is Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. Everyone calls him the Ultimate Exorcist. There's got to be an Ultimate Demon Lord too, either that we haven't seen or that will emerge from one of the Supreme Demon Lords. Plus, there's all this stuff around like heaven and angels and God. I'm sure that will get explored. I'm sure that isn't all that it seems. I think there's been a lot of implication that that kind of whole organization, although it fights against the demons, just like the demons have a lot of good people on their side, and demon society is nicer than you would expect. I'm sure the angelic society has some bad apples involved, and is not so nice as you would expect. So I don't know, it's pretty cool. I think they've really set up the world building in an interesting way. It's very like both modern, like One Piece, where it's like, yeah, this is the Demon Lord rank, this is the Supreme Demon Lord rank, there's N people at each rank. Guess what? You're going to see them all. These are our Kloros Paladins. They're the highest rank. You're going to see them all, you know? That kind of world building. It's also very loose in a sense where it's not really clear what, like, the end game is. Like, this whole arc wasn't like a necessary next step or whatever. It was just trying to rescue Shishido, right? Like, it didn't have to happen. And moreover, the arc after this, I don't know what the hell it is, because it doesn't have to happen. It's all just kind of emerging dynamically. Versus something like One Piece, where they need to get to the end of the Grand Line. Everything is consequential from that, right? What is Kiyoshi's ultimate goal? And this might sound like a criticism, but I think it is just kind of cool that it's like that loose, that it has that sense of freedom. Anyways, this month was all fighting, and I just think the fights in the series are fantastic. I love how they're drawn. I love the attack names. I love the sense of scale and how they've been escalating it through the entire series. I'm excited to see as well how it will scale from beyond there. Yeah, I don't know. It's really good. I liked Hitsugi's battle, where it's kind of like science experiment-y. It's always good in Shonen, trying to figure out how the enemy's attacks work, how your own attacks work, trying to find some edge. Kiyoshi comes, of course, starts fighting. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I like that the Demon Lord Bobo, who they're fighting against, became a Kiyoshi fanboy and is like calling out Kiyoshi's attacks names and going, "Whoa! Oh shit, he's using Moonrise Kingdom on me. Oh my god, that's awesome. Oh my god, was that a new attack?" And then it was a new attack, that we hadn't seen in the series yet. But he's like fanboying about that. It's fun, it's fun. So yeah, I think this is great. We'll give it an A+. I hope it goes and goes and goes. I think there's a lot of ground they could cover. They're just kind of going at it in any which way they'd like, which is awesome. Yeah, man, this is like the darkest of dark horses, When it started, I had zero hopes for it, but it really quickly endeared itself to me and started doing some stuff I really, really liked. And then it just kind of has been getting better and better and better. It managed to survive some kind of rocky times in terms of popularity and hit its stride, so I hope this could go like a couple hundred chapters. All right. Next, Kagurabachi, which I think now we're in the territory of stuff that I expect will run for quite a long time, that definitely Jump wants to run for a very long time. Kagurabachi of these, I think, has the most endgame in sight. We seemed like we were approaching like the very finale of the story, since the Sword Master was kind of the final ultimate boss, and there wasn't really much room left to build up a more ultimate final boss beyond him, Felt like they'd kind of written themselves into a corner with that. But then they hit one of several emergency buttons available to them. And the one they hit was Flashback Arc. A very common button hit by many Battle Shonen writers. Here it was good because they had built up this kind of mysterious backstory of the war against this island and things that kind of focus on the fact that this, in fact, is not in Japan as much as it seems like Japan. This is, in fact, a mysterious fantasy world that seems like modern society, but has had a history that is totally different, sort of like Chojin X. Now we get to see the war that happened before the events of the series that necessitated the creation of the enchanted blades that created the malediction, this nuke going off moment, very controversial by the Swordmaster. So that's all cool. Like, I'm excited to see all this stuff. It's cool seeing the characters when they're younger, seeing Chihiro's dad alive, his strange behavior as a youth, just obsessed with making swords, totally asocial, constantly hungry. Basically, the whole flashback starts with the birth of the Enchanted Blades, where they've recovered the strange material that appeared alongside this mysterious island, trying to figure out how to forge it into weaponry. I really like this whole sequence where Chihiro's dad is summoned in, as well as this sushi chef, who's like the great swordsmith of that era. I really, really liked his characterization too. I kind of wish, though, that, and this is my big complaint with this arc, it's like there are a lot of opportunities and mysteries in this. Like, seeing what these strange island people look like and what their whole deal is, and seeing these battles during the war of everybody at their prime and strength and stuff. But it's like, we know what happens. We know where this is going. So a lot of the stuff that's kind of set up like it should be kind of a suspenseful and then cathartic moment, we already know what happens. Like, when the sushi chef guy gets introduced, he's really cool, and I like him, and I want to see more of him, but it's like, we already know that he loses to Chihiro's dad. We already know that Chihiro's dad is the one that makes the enchanted blades. So we know this guy's gonna just get mogged, right? It kind of, like, there's part of the appeal is lost of, like, just how badass is this guy. The answer turned out to be extremely badass, and he was really cool. But we know it's not enough. We know that Chihiro's dad is the superior entity here, you know? We also meet Chihiro's mom, a prophetic princess. Gotta have a prophetic princess. Everybody loves a prophetic princess. There is, like, kind of a weird sexlessness in this manga, too, that I think is very highlighted with this. This is the first, like, kind of romantic plotline at all. The first implication whatsoever that characters can, like, fall in love and be interested in each other. And it's one that we know ends in, like, childbirth, that ends with the birth of the protagonist. And so it's like, there's no real, like, sense of allure or mystery or whatever. No sense of you know, the pangs of love and the tension of will it come to fruition. Again, we already know what happens. But yeah, I don't know. So it's kind of strange. It's very, very strange to me to be doing all of this, having already said all the stuff they said. I think this does feel like a slapping of an emergency button. Because if they had planned on doing, like, a backstory arc up until now, they could have made a lot more stuff a lot more mysterious, you know? But whatever. It's all good. Really am enjoying these chapters for what they are. It's just kind of in context they sort of lose something. Give it an A+ for the month. But yeah, I think after this, we'll go back to the present day. There'll be probably quite a bit of, like, Chihiro making new enchanted blades, regathering allies, mobilizing forces against the Swordmaster, who in turn will entrench himself deeper and gather more allies and stuff. And then they'll kind of re-instigate this final battle. So I think the ending is still quite a ways off. And there's all sorts of opportunities within there to explore more and have side stories and introduce more characters and stuff too. And yeah, I'm excited. I think they'll do a good job with all of that. I think they're doing a good job with this flashback too. It's just many strange elements of like, why? Like, why are you acting like that's a mystery? We know. We know what happened. We know that's his mom. We know that's his mom. Why are you like, ooh, will she end up with Chihiro's dad? We know. Okay, next, let's talk about the other future pillar of Jump. I think the heir apparent in a lot of ways of Jump, with the Irame's Demon School writer, which is the massive giga success that's been going for years and years and years. They want the same from their own contribution from him. And yeah, so far it's all gas, no brakes. They're really setting up for a long, long run. After showing the World Eater really, really early, I felt a little disappointed because it felt like maybe they were moving with some urgency that I didn't think was required. But no. Now they've, like, really just opened it up. It's like the World Eater, World Hater has all these, like, high-rank minions, including the Octobomb magic. And we're just gonna, like, take our time finding them, battling them, whatever. This was the climax of this arc, but it was a fairly substantial, fairly long arc. And I'm sure they're just gonna swing right back into another major arc soon enough, too. This is one that could easily go for, like, 300 chapters. But yeah, really nice stuff this month. Going for a lot of really sentimental, poetic, cathartic moments that I think on paper I would have said, oh, these are kind of unearned. These feel very like weird and sudden. But no, actually, they hit home. I was actually kind of like surprised. The final message he has to his wife, the Chrono Weaver magic, really, really lovely. Lots of little small, beautiful touches and kind of showing a montage of their relationship and stuff. Then we return to Des versus the Reverser magic and all of the zombies. It's, again, a little strange. Like, they kind of were like, oh, she gets it. Even though they look like humans, these are really just zombies. So she steals herself and is able to overcome. And then meets her brother, and of course, that's where it breaks down, and she can't help but not kill her brother or something that looks like her brother or whatever. But then the resolution there was that she just kind of like reminds herself that he's a zombie. And it's like, oh, right, well, yeah, this isn't really my brother, it's a zombie. So again, it's like, just like the sequencing of stuff in this series has always felt a little weird to me. Just a little suboptimal, I guess. But sure, good stuff still. Emotionally impactful. Des, now freed of this constraint, of this challenge, and the emotional significance of her brother just kind of goes around nuking things, annihilating the Octobomb. Big wrap-up sequence where Minerva gives birth. Again, very sentimental, very cathartic, very beautiful. Surprisingly, really moving in this depiction of childbirth, in her reflections around her husband and the life she's lived and stuff. Stuff that I really didn't think would hit anywhere near as hard as it did, but I think in those moments, the writing of the series really, really shines, and they get a little experimental with the paneling and just the story depiction and stuff too. That's where it like really steps up to just a very beautiful artistic project. Really, everything in the series succeeds for me, except for kind of like the macro arc writing, where I really just kind of feel like they just need to like take all of the elements and sort them out a little better and be more free to be like, I like this idea, but it doesn't have to happen in this arc. Let's put that somewhere else. Instead of just like feeling like you got a big hat labeled story ideas, and things labeled on it are like magic and human have a child, magic that can manipulate time, Kraken magic who despises humans but can't relate to them, seafaring adventure, Dessa's brother, zombies, blah, 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 whatever. All the disparate elements of this arc, you manage to just pull those out of the hat haphazardly and just dump them on the table and be like, okay, there's our arc. And each one of those is good, and each one of them is well written and has great moments, but they just kind of come out randomly in a random order. I think that's my big beef. But whatever. It's all great. I did still find all of these elements very moving and very well done. Just occasionally I would just be like, wait, why are we doing this now? Yeah. And then after all that, a very cute slice of life chapter where we get to explore more of the Witch Association. I really like the scene too that Ichi is like comforting Des in her own way. Even though Descartes, I don't think, shared any of what happened with him. He just instinctively goes to her and tries to comfort her. They make a joke about how it's like a dog. A dog can sense when you're sad. Really nicely stuff. Really nicely done stuff, I mean. And again, a good sign for the longevity of the series is that they're willing to have like a purely slice of life, no real plot development chapter that just kind of builds out the world a little bit, builds out the characters a little bit, and allows you to just enjoy spending time in that world, which I think is so key for manga. Manga is not a medium about rushing. Manga is not prestige television with 8-episode seasons. Manga is about existing. Really, really good stuff. We will give it an A+ for the month. Okay. Then, One Piece. I do think that One Piece will still outlive all of these other series, even though we are moving into the final saga of One Piece. Even though I do think I kind of know everything else that's going to happen in One Piece. I want to make a video about that, by the way. Breaking down what I think the upcoming arcs will be and some of the upcoming twists and stuff. Placing my bets, if you will. Because it does seem like we are moving into the climax of Elbaf. I do use the word climax specifically, not the finale of Elbaf. I think there are still mysteries to uncover. There's a whole big frickin' sword sticking into the island that they haven't talked about. There's the astral lair, the astral world. It's at the top of the tree they haven't talked about. But whatever, we'll get to it. As always, you can read or watch me talk about each of these chapters as I read them at length. But in summary, yeah, this is the big climactic battles of Elbaf. It actually goes a lot faster than I thought it would. Jinbei even says something about, like, once we were able to fight back, this didn't take long at all. They kind of just start walloping everybody. And it's true, up until that point, they did not have Loki and Luffy and a bunch of the other giants ready to fight. So they showed up and they swung the tide back, and it turns out these holy knights and this representation of Imu, light work. Some more lore implication stuff as well. We learn a bit more about what this demonification process really is. We see that Chopper is able to undo it trivially, which is very strange. A lot of different theories around why that is. So far, it does seem like the demonification does not work on anybody with devil fruits, which is a very broad category. So you'd think there might be a counterexample, but it's not like we've really seen that many people get demonified yet. And we just know straight up it does not work on devil fruit people. And it may be that Chopper using any sort of devil fruit against it also just undoes it immediately, because we hadn't even seen an example of that yet. We just saw demonified rocks battle against Garp and Roger. No devil fruits involved. So maybe that is the missing piece of the equation. I don't know. We'll see. Other great moments. Usopp having this grand final speech, even though he knows he's doomed. That was very good, reinforcing his attachment to Elbaf. I'm hoping in the kind of finale of Elbaf 2, there's some more stuff with Usopp. Frankie powering up with Super Cola, I think, is a hint that all of the Straw Hats are going to get major power-ups as the final saga continues. And then, yeah, they drive back Imu. Imu in the Holy Land, the actual body, says that it's going to leave, and I don't know where the hell that's going to go from here. It could be that there is still like a super final climax of Elbaf, but I kind of don't think it. I kind of think like fighting over, now it's more like discoveries and adventures and learning about the mysteries of Elbaf. So, yeah, I don't know. Good stuff. Give it an S+ for the month. As always, just loving One Piece. It's so great. And yeah, I do think after all those other series we talked about end, even Ichi the Witch, which they want to be the new pillar, it'll get 300 chapters in, and we'll be on One Piece chapter 1478. That's my prediction. Okay, but there is one series that will go even further than One Piece. One Piece will end, and they will write a tribute chapter about it in Roboco. Roboco will outlive my grandchildren. It will be Kochi Kame times 1,000,000,000. She's a robot. She'll never die. So why would the series ever end? I did get freaked out last month because they had kind of an end tease chapter where this whole plotline of Roboco always trying to make manga. She's always ripping off other manga. There is one series that they praise, that they say, I think you can try to serialize this. We find out that series is me and Roboco. And that kind of like twisting self-reference, this is the origin of everything you've been reading kind of thing. I was like, oh shit, is it ending? No. That, I don't know what the hell that was, but they did not follow up on it at all. And then we just had 5 silly shenanigans chapters, just like it never even hinted at anything. So that's great. I think I just misunderstood what the hell the joke was there. I guess that it was just a joke that the only good thing she can produce is me and Roboco, which is kind of like a self-deprecating joke about the quality of me and Roboco, of which there have been many. But this series is great. This series is so great, man. Chapter where they try to go viral on YouTube. What can I learn from that? I don't know. Probably nothing. I like how depraved it got with all of these demented challenges. Tribute chapter for Modulo ending. Roboco becoming like Mahoraga, adapting in all these strange things. Kagurabachi dies again in that chapter. That cracked me up. I just like the way that she adapts to things that aren't even remotely attacks. Roboco trying to write blurbs for a different Jump manga. Very straightforward. Jokes, you know, obviously trying to build up to being able to write a blurb for One Piece. One where they do sushi draft, which was very fun. A lot of good like game theory jokes. A lot of trick type jokes. It kind of felt like a Fukumoto chapter where it was a combination of game theory, psychology, and just outright skill, kind of cheaterly type skill. Very, very fun. Made me crave sushi, obviously. And I think the sushi draft is real. I'm pretty sure after Magic the Gathering events, pro players would go to sushi restaurants and do a literal sushi draft, where they would pass the plates around and you took one piece at a time until you'd finished your draft plate. You know, just like a Magic draft. So I don't know if that's a coincidence or they're inspired by this or whatever, but I really liked the depiction of the sushi draft. Very, very fun. And then another great chapter where Madoka gets back into shogi and battles against the 4 heavenly kings of shogi that all battle her in different increasingly wacky spots. Lots of very good Madoka faces. They're always parodying other competition manga with these. And then a very bizarre Showa-era style gag ending where they just acknowledge, like, well, that's the end of the chapter. And then there's, like, no real climax or lesson or whatever. They just kind of run out of pages. Great, great stuff. That's the kind of stuff you want to see from a 2,000 chapter series. We will give it an A+ for the month. And that is it. This was our tier list last month. The Elusive Samurai finale on top, of course. This month, a little bit of shuffling around, but nothing below a B-, which is exciting. Love Shonen Jump as always. Lots of stuff in the A+ tier. Might have to come up with like A+, A++, and then S- or something to delineate these. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see soon enough. Tomorrow is another issue, as it always goes. Okay, that's all for now. Bye, bye, bye.